Welcome in to the Week 12 Waiver Wire Q&A brought to you by FanDuel. I am your host today, JL Garofalo, joined by my good friend here, JJ Zachariason. How you doing today, JJ?
I am great. I'm ready for Thanksgiving. A little bit of a break for us fantasy analysts,
Yeah,
which is much needed in the middle of the season. But yeah, man, things are good. Things are good.
things are good. How are you? How's Week 12? You're at Week 12 now. Things are
Yeah,
kind of been crazy this season. I feel like we say that every season. How are your leagues going?
good. I mean, I think I don't want to say it like if people have been following my advice and not doing well, and me saying like it's been a pretty decent year, then they'll say, well, then you suck because my team sucks and I've been listening to you all year. But yeah, I mean, it's been a decent year. I mean, the majority of my leagues, I don't have many league. I can't even think of a league where I'm not like in it in some way. So I'm feeling good right now.
Feeling good. I feel like that's all you can ask for. As long as you're like above average, then you're beating variance. So you're good. Beating the median. We got all these we got some waiver wire questions in here already. That's what we're here for the next 30 minutes. JJ and I are here answering all of your week 12 waiver wire questions. We already got one in here, JJ. One from Victor who asks, "Happy Thanksgiving week, guys. Thankful for the fantasy advice. Hey JJ, I've been living with streaming with QB so far, 7-4. Should I stream Derek Carr, Jimmy G, or start primetime Kirk Cousins this week? What do you think?"
Yeah, so I actually, I did my rest of season rankings, which I do every Monday to Tuesday, and I publish those out over my Patreon. And I'll tell you what, man, I am very higher than consensus at least, on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy G is in a pretty good spot here. Rest of season, they have one of the most friendly quarterback schedules. Rest of season, it's top 6 in the league in adjusted fantasy points allowed. The playoff schedule is really good too. And he's just been playing well. I mean, he's averaged since CMC got there and he's played significant snaps. He's averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game. Jimmy G has, and he's in a good spot this week. If you look, I obviously have not studied the schedule very deeply yet because it's just Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon. But I will say, the 49ers at home against the Saints this week, I will take that over, Derek Carr going up against Seattle. Then Minnesota gets New England, not a great matchup. So I'm pretty confidently going Jimmy G among that group.
Yeah, Jimmy G, he just feels like a solid QB option, and then with all those weapons now on his available to him, it seems like he has got that level up. CMC there just has got me like
Yeah.
way more hyped for Jimmy G.
The thing is, and this is not taking away from someone like Tua, who's crushing and doing great. And I'm not, Tua is a little bit different than Jimmy G because Tua is actually pushing it down the field to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. But both those offenses are predicated to some degree on creating yards after the catch, especially in San Francisco. If you look at how they've built that team and the kind of players that they've been getting, starting with George Kittle, going to Brandon Ayuk, one of the best yak wide receivers like we've ever seen in college. Then they get Deebo Samuel, obviously, also on that team, who is one of the best in the league, if not the best after the catch. And then you get Christian McCaffrey, who is a running back who can play in the slot, who can play wide receiver. So like that whole offense is literally like the guys that they have make total sense. That's exactly what Kyle Shanahan likes to do. And when you're a quarterback, you just have to get the ball in those guys' hands. Jimmy Garoppolo can distribute the ball really well, which is why, I think that he can be very, very fantasy relevant down the stretch here.
Yeah, I was thinking like that season with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, where he just nonstop kept throwing those screens to Derrick Henry, who would just like take it to the house. Yeah. Ryan Tannehill had so many passing yards that season. So
yeah,
similar type of thing. We got Joey in here. So what are your general thoughts on waiver claims by teams who are out of it at this point in the season?
I mean, look, I think that it's up to the commissioner to come up with rules around those kinds of things. Entering the season, it's just really important to, have those parameters set so that people know whether they can do it or not. And my general philosophy on this stuff is you just do it. If there's no rules around it, like you can do whatever you want as long as there aren't any rules. If there are rules, then obviously don't break those rules. But if you want to compete, if you want to play, then you can still add players. I mean, it's up to you, I think, as the fantasy manager, whether or not you want to do that. There should be some incentive, though, for teams who are not in it to either not participate, which is fine, or to participate. And there should be a reason for that. And I think the commissioner needs to sort of set the parameters around that.
Yeah, I used to, whenever I commission league, I always like adding in like weekly prizes. So that just kind of eliminates the issue that this situation brings up, which is that every week you have something to play for, whether you're in the playoffs or not. And I like that. I like that approach to it. But I agree with you. I'm generally of the mindset of you're here to play a game, play the game, right? If everybody plays to the best of their ability, then it's fun because otherwise you start messing up the other, you all of a sudden one person doesn't pick people up or, they don't start people because they're not in the playoffs and, they give someone else, another opponent in your league, an easy win and it messes up the whole, parity. So I'm with you, JJ. I'm with you on that one. Yeah, a question from Larry David who asks, what do we do with Joshua Palmer with Mike Williams hurt again? If he was dropped, would he be a priority ad?
I would say priority ad, probably not. Only because, it depends on like who else is out there. I'm assuming like Latavius Murray's out there, and I would rather have Latavius Murray this week getting him off the waiver wire than going after someone like Josh Palmer. We have to keep in mind with Palmer this past week that they played Kansas City, which has been a really good matchup for wide receivers this season. A lot broke Palmer's way. I mean, we can't assume that he's going to have the pair of scores and the long touchdown that he had, all that kind of stuff. I don't mind Palmer as like a complementary piece in the offense. I just don't think that he's, a true number one within an offense in general in the NFL. With Mike Williams banged up, I do think that Palmer should be rostered because obviously, he hurt the same ankle that he had injured and why he was sidelined earlier this season, throughout the season. So obviously, Palmer should be rostered, but, priority ad, is he an ad? Yes. Is he a priority ad? I don't think so. Only because there are some other guys out there, like a Latavius Murray, who I would probably prefer more.
What about like Donovan Peoples-Jones? Would you rather have him or Josh Palmer?
I think I go DPJ just because you're looking longer term, right? I mean, I can look at my rest of season rankings to give a better idea of this and to give you guys some context. To be fair, I'm higher on Donovan Peoples-Jones than I have been for a while now, but I have DPJ at 84 overall right now. So he's a wide receiver 38. Part of that is a combination of he's already performing very well. He's seeing these like 20% plus target shares in the Browns offense. And then, oh, by the way, all of a sudden Deshaun Watson's going to be back. Right. And so DPJ is someone that I definitely would want to have rostered, but I have DPJ at 84 overall. And then right now I have Palmer at 114 overall. So I do have Palmer ranked in the top 150, but I do think that DPJ to me is in that like rookie wide receiver with Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson kind of range. Whereas I think Josh Palmer is sort of in like the, Drake London kind of area and I only say that because I don't know if the long-term benefit of Josh Palmer is going to be there just because when Mike Williams is healthy, when Keenan Allen's healthy, we know that Palmer's not going to be heavily involved in the offense. It's just the way that this offense operates. We've seen it already this season. Right. And so, or for a little bit at least, even when Keenan Allen was out, we saw Josh Palmer not be, with Mike Williams, we saw Josh Palmer not be this solid fantasy asset. So, I just don't think it's necessary to like go super, super hard. If you need a win right away, if you need a win right now, I understand if you want to go at him this week, but someone like DPJ, I just think has a lot more upside.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think Deshaun Watson coming back gives DPJ a huge boost, a massive boost here, which is not going to get that with Josh Palmer. And Joseph in here asks a question. He said, how much of a priority is adding Treylon Burks this week? We're just talking about Josh Palmer. Is Treylon Burks, you said he would be above Josh Palmer for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think Treylon Burks is sort of in the DPJ tier only because of the potential upside there. Burks was a really good prospect in my model. I had my model's rankings were Drake London, then Chris Olave, then Garrett Wilson, and then Treylon Burks. So he wasn't that far from those other guys. I mean, he had a good profile overall, obviously had the good draft capital. He to me is by far the most talented wide receiver on the Titans team. Now, situationally, the situation's not great for Tennessee. They're a run-heavy team. Ryan Tannehill's fine, but he's not, an unbelievable quarterback. But, we're buying into talent here. It's similar to sort of how I viewed Garrett Wilson earlier this season, where, obviously it hasn't panned out to the degree in which, anyone who got Garrett Wilson wanted it to pan out. He hasn't been like that unbelievable of a fantasy asset. He's been good. But when there's talent like that on your waiver wire, you just have to go after it. Regardless of the situation, don't like buy into that or read into that too much, because it's really easy to then talk yourself out of it. And then all of a sudden you have someone who is capable of giving you those spiked weeks like we saw last week with Treylon Burks, and you just passed him up because he was in a bad situation. You should buy talent first, and Treylon Burks has that talent. So just to give you some context, I'm in a 14-team league. I have the number 2 waiver priority. The number 1 waiver priority is a team who is out of it, is probably not even going to be like looking at waivers. I think they have like 1 or 2 wins. So I basically have the top waiver priority. I'm going to use it on Treylon Burks this week because he is out there in that league. My bench was pretty stacked. I wasn't able to get him last week. And so, I'm going to use that priority on him then this week.
Over Christian Watson, do you think, if he's on your waivers?
I like Christian Watson more still. Again, a lot of these like rookie wide receivers, I'm higher on than the market, just to be clear. Like last week, Christian Watson, I had him ranked as like the wide receiver 35 rest of season, which was aggressive. Like a lot of people had him ranked in like the 50s. But again, you don't want to pass up these opportunities to get talented rookie wide receivers. Rookies tend to perform a lot better during the second half of the season than the first half. You don't want to miss out on this year's Amon-Ra St. Brown, which can happen. I mean, it's not that crazy of a, I mean, it was an outlier situation for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but those kinds of things to some degree, to some extent, 70, 80% of what Amon-Ra did, those happen every single season and you don't want to miss out. So I would be aggressive in getting some of these rookie wide receivers. I was aggressive with Christian Watson. I would be aggressive. I have Treylon Burks in a lot of leagues, just didn't get him in that one. I would be aggressive if he's still out there in your leagues.
I'm taking note here because it took exactly 10 minutes for you to mention your model in this stream.
Yeah.
It's honest. It's pretty good for you. Proud of you.
Yeah, that is pretty
getting
good.
Getting better.
Yeah.
And Joey said, JL, please read any Larry David questions as Larry David.
Yeah,
absolutely not. If I knew more about Larry David, like if I watched more of his stuff, then maybe, but no, not a chance. Jay in here asking, Demarcus Robinson, is he a week 1 wonder or worth stashing?
He's worth stashing, I think. I mean, I have him stashed in some leagues. I think I have him stashed. I think I played him against Jay last week in a league.
Oh, really? The North
Carolina now that I'm
league?
thinking about it. And Jay had like some crazy. We won't talk about it. So yeah, no. Demarcus Robinson is someone who definitely should be added this week. Really good target shares without Rashad Bateman in that lineup. Bateman got hurt in that game against Tampa Bay fairly early in that game. He didn't come back to that game. And since then, if you count that game, Demarcus Robinson's seen crazy target shares within the Baltimore offense. Now, I will say Devin Duvernay is playing ahead of Demarcus Robinson in terms of snaps, in terms of routes, all that kind of stuff. It's not that far ahead, though. It's not that significantly different. I think Demarcus Robinson is showing us that he's Lamar Jackson's favorite receiver. I mean, he's the guy that Jackson's leaning on more than Devin Duvernay. And so just given that, you have to follow the trends, follow what we're seeing. And Demarcus Robinson looks decent. I mean, I don't think you can leave that kind of target share on the waiver wire.
Yeah, it's weird that Devin Duvernay only has 1 target the last 2 games. It's probably just getting focused by the defense.
I would also anticipate, the 2 of them to sort of meet in the middle a little bit more than they have, so like, don't expect a 29% target share from Demarcus Robinson every single week, but he's just been really good. I mean, he caught all 9 of his targets this past week. Had 128 yards. It's not like we're seeing that from Devin Duvernay this season very often. So, I think Robinson should definitely, he cracked my 150 this week, my top 150. So I think that he should definitely be rostered.
I bought in so hard to Demarcus Robinson. It was Patrick Mahomes' rookie season. Yeah. And he was playing in the preseason games, and he and Demarcus Robinson had such a connection. I was like, oh yeah, here we go. Demarcus Robinson, sleeper. Nothing.
Yeah, he's a fun player. He's not bad.
Yes. Jake in here asking, is Allen Robinson worth dropping for Latavius Murray?
I don't know if Allen Robinson is necessarily worth dropping depending on your league size and stuff, but I will say I do have Latavius Murray a pretty good bit ahead of Allen Robinson rest of the season. I can look up Latavius right now. I have him. I have Latavius at RB31 right now. He's like right next to Deontay. He's like a Deontay Foreman type, someone who will probably see a little bit better of a target share than Foreman. But my fear with Latavius Murray is that this week he can be fine. They're playing Carolina also, and it's a decent matchup. But the over-under in that game is 35.5, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, which is just to give you some context, the Bills this week have a team total of 32. And the game with the Broncos and the Panthers is 35.5. So it's going to be a low-scoring game more than likely. But Latavius Murray this week, with only Marlon Mack really there on that in that backfield, should see a really nice workload. And then Mike Boone is going to return eventually. And so I could see some like diminishing returns as you get towards the end of the season. Whereas, someone like Deontay Foreman, just to give you an example or comparison, who I'm not super high on by any means, but someone like Foreman is probably going to be locked into the same role week in and week out from here on out. But I would go Latavius Murray. I have him at 73 overall right now, and Allen Robinson probably around 100 or so, I would assume. Yeah, he's at 97. So I would go Latavius Murray over Allen Robinson. Quarterback situation's up in the air for the Rams too right now. We don't know what's going on with Matthew Stafford and if he's going to be able to go or not. Not only that, but like it's not like even Robinson after, I know that he's like producing fine enough, but like even Robinson after Cooper Kupp's injury and such, he has not seen like that great of a target share in the offense. It's not like it's like changed that dramatically at all. So I'm not like super high on Robinson. I think Murray's more of a high floor, low ceiling play. Robinson, blah play. So let's just go with the guy who at least has a floor.
That's fair, man. I love these questions where you look at it and you're like, if I had seen this before the season, I would have thrown up.
For real.
Joey asked, Juwan Johnson has 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. Can I trust him as a streamable tight end rest of the season?
All right. So with tight ends, you just have to ask yourself one question. Is he breathing? And if the answer is yes, then you can probably use him. The tight end position's rough. It's really rough. He has like a 14% target share during the stretch of 5 games. And I know I'm just saying that off the top of my head, just because I looked at it already. I've seen, it's not like we had these pre-planned questions.
Yeah.
These numbers are just in my head from looking at stuff.
I was wondering.
So, Juwan Johnson, 14-ish% target share per game during the stretch. Touchdowns, unsustainable, yes. And he's had some fluky touchdowns too. You remember the one against Baltimore at the end of that game where he like had the weird tiptoe and like they thought that he was out of bounds and all that kind of stuff. He had some weird like garbage time type touchdowns, but those count too. And at the tight end position where there's not many players who are even seeing a 14% target share, you just need a touchdown to be a tight end one. I think that he's rosterable. Yes. I think that you can trust him as a streamable option, at least right now. I think he's good too. I think Juwan Johnson's like a good player. I mean, he's someone who can play wide receiver. He played wide receiver. So like he's a good pass catching tight end. I just worry a little bit that this offense isn't that strong. They do have other options in Chris Olave. Now Jarvis Landry's back, Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. And they're using Taysom Hill now more at quarterback, which is not a good thing necessarily because they're probably going to be a little bit more run heavy as a result. But I think Juwan Johnson's fine.
Yeah, he looks good. If those opportunities went up, I think he would be like the fantasy community would be a little more hyped on him. Big Trev asking DPJ. What up, Trev? So DPJ, Adam Thielen, Rondale Moore, or Jameson Williams, full PPR.
Yeah, if this is like a rest of season question, we don't know what's going on with Rondale Moore, or else I haven't seen. Have you seen anything on him after last night's injury?
Not since the groin, no.
Yeah. So, if he's out for any period of time, you have to keep in mind that Marquise Brown's coming back too. And so, maybe this week, but at least soon, I think they have a week 13 bye. So it would at least be after that bye. I think that you could make the argument here that it's DPJ. I don't mind throwing the dart at Jameson Williams. We just don't know when he's going to be back. Adam Thielen is kind of dusty at this point. But DPJ seeing consistent target shares, finally found the end zone this past week. They're going to get Deshaun Watson back. I think DPJ is the play here of this group only because Rondale Moore is banged up. I think technically I might have had Moore ahead of DPJ in rest of season. Oh, he's 2 spots ahead in rest of season rankings, but that's just because of the ambiguity. Like we just don't know what's going on with that injury right now. The more I'm thinking about it, they're in the same tier, but the more I'm thinking about it, should probably just go DPJ. It's a lot safer of a bet.
Yeah, don't have to deal with that injury going back and forth on that. Server Dude asking, how much stock do you put into adding defenses a week early? Stash Miami versus handcuff backs or wide receiver 3-4 players you probably don't play?
It depends. One of the things that I definitely look at is my league active during waivers each week in getting defenses? If it's a league that is just crushing the defense position, the DST position immediately at waivers, and I know that it's going to be hard to get some of these defenses, then I will look ahead, especially during the playoffs. Like if it's playoff time, you play more safety because your team's likely pretty good. You don't need that like random upside from a player. From a handcuff or something like that. And a lot of handcuffs, we have to keep in mind, a lot of handcuffs in fantasy football, when they do get called upon, I did a study on this a few years ago. When they do get called upon, they give you like RB4 or RB3, RB4 production anyway. It's not like these handcuffs are necessarily so good. We just remember the ones that are good. There's a lot of them who just suck, who are terrible. They're backups for a reason, right? And so I think it's totally fine to look ahead. I just think it's league dependent, depending on how active your league is, because I'm in a league where it's not super active, and I know that I can just wait. I don't even put in a claim for a defense during waivers because I know that I can probably get a decent one the next day for free just by waking up at 6 a.m. and just kind of perusing and looking at my teams in the waiver wires and going that route. So I know that I don't have to roster multiple, but in leagues that are more aggressive and more they're more active, you can definitely hold multiple.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Joseph in here asking, Garrett Wilson has dropped in my league. Is he a priority ad and who would you rather have between him and Burks? So we already talked about Burks a little bit earlier in the show. I don't think we touched much on Garrett Wilson though.
They have a decent playoff schedule, the Jets do, which is a little bit intriguing and why I think Garrett Wilson's more of a hold. I would not be dropping him after the 1 week. I have Burks one spot ahead right now, so it's really just like a dealer's choice. If you would rather go Wilson, that's fine. I'm going to lean into the situation where I feel better about the quarterback position, which is Ryan Tannehill. So I'm probably going to, that's really the tiebreaker for me. But I would try to add both. I mean, they're both top 90 players for me right now. They should both be rostered right now.
Right. You got to have two people on your roster now that you can drop for those two guys.
Yeah.
Got to. Carlos, my man Carlos in here asking, is Paris Campbell the real deal? And he asks, would you pick up him or Burks?
So I have Burks ahead of Paris Campbell, but I'm actually higher on Paris Campbell than the consensus. So I understand this question for sure. He's seeing really good target shares with Matt Ryan. Entering last week, it was like close to his previous 3 games with Matt Ryan. Entering last week was like a 28% target share. He was averaging like wide receiver 1 numbers in that 3-game stretch. Now, obviously, he didn't have as good of a game this past week. It wasn't horrible, and his target share was not as strong. But I do think, earlier this season, we were making jokes that he was just getting a lot of cardio in that offense because he was just out there and not getting a lot of targets. He was just running around. But, they sort of switched up that offense. There was that one game where Jonathan Taylor saw a ton of, I can't remember. It was the one game where Matt Ryan had like 340 yards or whatever. And they were throwing a lot of more dink and dunk passes. And it was like, oh my gosh, this offense is back. And they are doing that a little bit more. And that's helped Paris Campbell because Paris Campbell is the slot guy. Alec Pierce is the one who stretches the field. Alec Pierce is the one who could see that high average depth of target. And so Paris Campbell to me is a totally competent and good, like wide receiver 3 to 4 in a full PPR league. I think that he should be rostered. Yeah. But not over Treylon Burks. I would take Treylon Burks over Campbell.
Okay. That's good to know. That's good context. Good context. Larry in here asking, the Lost Pits, is David Njoku a must add with Watson coming back?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, he's it's a team that runs a lot of 12 personnel. It's a team that focuses a lot of their efforts on the tight end position. David Bell is seeing a little bit more work in that offense. Not significant, but he is seeing more. He's more of like the slot guy in that offense who would hypothetically take some of the looks away from the tight ends. But this past week, Harrison Bryant ran more routes than David Njoku. I would not expect that moving forward. I think it's just Njoku coming off the injury and sort of getting back to his typical self. So yeah, I mean, I think Njoku has an opportunity to be like top 7, top 8 tight end once Deshaun Watson's back.
Yeah, that's all those options on that Browns offense, I think, are going to get a big boost. They're going to end up being values, I think, at the end of the season.
For sure.
We got Ronnie Hot Dog in the house said, does Pitts going down make Drake London a must add?
So I don't know about must add. I mean, a lot of people are using that for like must add or like a top priority and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if London's a must add, but I think that he does get a little bit of a boost with Kyle Pitts being sidelined. Yeah. The problem is that Atlanta is not throwing the ball a lot. They still only Chicago has a lower pass rate this season. It's not a team that's going to really be that beneficial for their pass catchers, but I do think that Drake London should be rostered right now. I have him around, around the 100 range, like around where Curtis Samuel is, maybe a Paris Campbell a little bit higher, but I mean, he should be added. I don't know if he's a must add, but he should be added because it just depends on what's out there. If Treylon Burks is out there, I'd rather have Treylon Burks. If Latavius Murray's out there, I'd rather have Latavius Murray. But Drake London, obviously incredibly talented. So sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Big slice of a teeny tiny pie, as Simon says. It's a very tiny pie there in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Surfer Dude asking, is Jameson Williams really worth adding? Hard for me to see him making a big impact in the fantasy playoffs. Probably too scared to even risk playing him. What do you think about Jameson Williams coming off that injury, Detroit Lions rookie wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, he's a stash, right? Like you're just hoping that something can develop with him. We don't really have that much information. He's going to practice, but that's like the extent that's what we know. The good news from a usage standpoint is that Khalif Raymond's been running the second most routes on that team. And he's pretty replaceable. Like he's fine, but he's a replaceable asset. They don't have TJ Hawkinson there anymore. So if Jameson Williams were 100% healthy, he'd probably get like a 20% target share in that offense. And that's fairly decent in a pretty good offense. And so, I do think that he's worth stashing. It just depends on the kind of league you're in. If you're in a 10-team league, you can probably just like leave him on the wire. If you're in a 12-team league, that's when you start thinking about it. And then anything deeper than that, you can definitely add him.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Joseph asks, do you have any favorite under the radar ads this week off the waiver wire? Could be an ad for playoffs, maybe like a stash.
Yeah, I think Mike Boone is pretty interesting because he's been on IR and he's going to return. He's at least designated he can return in week 13. Latavius Murray is not that good of a running back. I mean, he's seeing work, but he's not been that good even this season with Denver. And then Marlon Mack is the other guy they have to compete with. Mike Boone has shown some talent whenever he's got opportunity, and he was used as a pass catcher for Denver before he got hurt. So, negative game scripts in that offense. They could see a lot of dump offs. So Mike Boone would be my under the radar, like dart throw this week.
Yeah, I like the Mike Boone call. I'd throw in also maybe Darius Slayton. I don't know how under the radar he is, but I feel like he's not.
Slayton,
yeah, not. I don't hear many people talking about him today. Let's see. We got Carlos has a good question here. Have we talked about Samaje Perine yet? How do you feel about Samaje Perine as a pickup this week? Joe Mixon went down with injury this past weekend. Samaje Perine filled in and just went to town on touchdowns. What do you think about Perine off the waiver? Are you adding them, or are you?
Yeah, I would add him. I mean, obviously concussion. He could play this week, but he could also. Teams are playing it a little bit safer. It seems like this season for good reason with concussions. So. The only downside is Cincinnati gets Tennessee this week, and Tennessee's been pretty good against the run of late, but at least Perine has the pass catching role locked up in that offense. I think he's a good ad. Yeah. But I wouldn't, again, short-term ad where we don't even know if he would be locked into like an RB1, RB2 production. Would you be that surprised if Samaje Perine walked away from a game against the Titans as an RB3 in fantasy football? I don't think anyone would be that shocked if that happens. And so you have to think that way. Whenever you're adding these guys, you're like, okay, I can maybe get RB1 production for a week. Maybe. I highly doubt that happens. Maybe RB2 is a little bit safer. Probably RB3 production, high-end RB3 maybe from Samaje Perine in PPR formats. Okay, that's for 1 week. And then Joe Mixon's back. Okay, now all of a sudden Mixon's back. Perine's not very valuable. I would just rather go after these other guys who have more value across multiple weeks. So that's sort of the way that I'm looking at a guy like Perine.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like I haven't heard many people take that stance on Perine, so I like that perspective. We got Larry David asking, any Rams backs worth adding this season, or is it just a mess?
The highest probability outcome here is that it's a mess. Kyron Williams played the most routes or played the most snaps for them this past week. He ran the most routes. He played 10 more snaps than Cam Akers did. Darrell Henderson apparently was a little bit banged up. So I wouldn't be surprised if Henderson would still be the guy, whenever they return next week. And so, there's just a lot up in the air. If you want to add Kyron and just see what happens, that's totally fine. He's going to be the pass catcher, and it's in an offense and on a team that's likely going to trail because they're not very good. So if you want to go with Kyron, I don't think it's that crazy of an idea, but I would not spend anything more than like $1 to get him.
Just like a stat, just see what happens.
Yeah, even Akers. Akers in the same boat. I just think a lot more people are going to go after Akers and spend like $5 to $10, maybe even 15 to get him because he led that backfield in running back rushes, but he actually didn't lead the backfield in snaps, and he's not seeing the pass catching work. That's just like a recipe. I mean, an early down back on the Rams is one of the least appetizing things I can think of.
And this will be our last question. We're about to close out here. Jake asking, I'm on a 12-man league. I'm in a 12-man league. My wide receiver core is Godwin, Waddle, and Juju, while my running backs consist of Dalvin Cook, Kenneth Walker, Swift, Rashad White, and Zeke. Is it smart for me to upgrade for a consistent wide receiver in Olave while I trade away Zeke?
If you're trading away Zeke for Olave, I would do that all day long and not even think twice. Yeah, Olave is like a high-end wide receiver too. You would be able to play him over Juju most weeks. And you don't need a guy like Zeke with those running backs. So, with Rashad White as an RB3, that's totally fine. So, I would trade away Zeke to get Chris Olave all day.
I'm with you. I'm making that trade as well. All right. Do me a favor. If we helped you out at all, or we were at least entertaining somewhat or good to look at, hit that like button on YouTube or Facebook and follow FanDuel on Twitch. And make sure you're following JJ Zachariason at Late Round QB, and check out his site, thelateround.com. You ready to get out of here, JJ?
Let's do it, man.
All right. We will see you next week for week 13 waiver wire Q&A. Till then, bye-bye.